Welcome to Black Enterprise from Martha's Vineyard, the quintessential summer retreat for African Americans. I'm Derek Dingle, Executive Vice President and Chief Content Officer for Black Enterprise. This is our special Black Enterprise, Economic Equity, and Racial Justice Town Hall on strategic philanthropy, making an impact. To discuss how we can impact communities of color, we have assembled a panel of extraordinary, game-changing philanthropic leaders who's going to talk about how we can change the world. We have Linda Wilson, Executive Director at Fund 2 Foundation. Linda oversees several signature initiatives enabling Black and brown people to move forward toward prosperity and fulfillment while fostering collaboration to achieve transformative scalability and sustainability. Next is Alicia Wilson, Managing Director and Global Head of Philanthropy for North America for JPMorgan Chase. Alicia oversees local philanthropic efforts across 40+ markets, collaborating with senior leaders to make an impact throughout the U.S. and Canada, including the stewardship of the $2 billion commitment that's part of its broader racial equity commitment. And our last panelist is Christal Jackson, founder of Mosaic Genius, parent company of Head and Heart Philanthropy, an agency focused on designing a sustainable ecosystem and supporting the building of communities of color through emerging VCs, diverse entrepreneurs, and creating an inclusive impact economy. Thank all of you for coming here. The first question is going to be an elaboration on what I just talked about, because our audience wants to know your professional and personal journey, your passion, and how you got here. I'm going to start with Christal and I can go down.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to share time with these ladies that I admire and respect. I started really from my family. In 1880, my family bought land in a small town outside of Texas, way before I was born, and we still live there. We still own that land. And Derek, it was out of seeing my family create a life that was sustainable for generations. I wanted to inspire other African Americans to have that same freedom in the United States of America. And it was while I was a student at Spelman College my freshman year that I realized my experience was not reflective of everyone that looked like me. And I was troubled by that because I know what it means to have a sense of security. It allows you to be creative, it allows you to be entrepreneurial and a free thinker. And I wanted to create space for that for people in our community. And I launched Head and Heart Philanthropy because I thought that it was important. And I believe the way to move people there is simply, well, it sounds simple, but reducing barriers to access. And once we can reduce the barriers to access and opportunity, then I think we can start to really talk about leveling the playing field. So that's what we're all about. That's what we do every day. We happen to convene on Martha's Vineyard annually. It's our 13th year. We're excited about that. And again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you. We're going to talk a bit more about some of the partnerships that you have on the island. And it's great to be on the island, especially during the Black Philanthropy Month, which is August. Alicia, share with us your journey. You started a powerful, professionally powerful, attorney, great negotiator, you shifted to philanthropy, but want to know a little bit about your backstory, which, propelled you to go into this space and to drive your professional ambitions and passions.
Well, thank you, Derek. Again, thank you for having us here today. I would say really the cornerstone of my being able to be propelled in philanthropy is that my parents really instilled from a very young age to build it into the way you live. That philanthropy, regardless of your personal resources, you still have something to give. And sometimes that is of your energy, sometimes that will be of your treasures, and sometimes that'll be of your talent. And so as I built my career over the course of the past decade and a half, I really tried to embed doing well and doing good in the work that I do. My pathway to JPMorgan Chase is really rooted in doing good by my community, really being rooted in how do you bring about transformational change with the platform that you have. And so there were so many connections that I had with JP Morgan before becoming into my role, and thinking about how does a branch in a community impact that community's opportunity and access to other catalytic opportunity. And so it's been a pleasure to be able to weave all of that into the career that I have now and the platform that I now have at JPMorgan Chase to drive catalytic change.
That's great. Linda, once again, I wanted to gain some insight, and I want our audience to gain some insight into how you came to this space. I know that you've been involved in diversity and inclusion, but tell us how you shifted to Fund to Foundation, and what had been some of your personal drivers in being a part of this world.
And like the others, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be talking about something that is passionate for all of us. But I started thinking as others were talking, I don't know about you all, but have you ever felt you don't know why you're doing things at the time, but later on it has served you well?
Yes.
And I started noticing some alliteration with the letter P. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a priest. I was raised Catholic, and of course I couldn't be. They wanted me to be a nun, but that didn't work. But and then I got very involved in the movement. I joined SNCC, I joined CORE, and then I ended up in the Black Panther Party. And you may say, well, that's different. Well, not really, because I called it servant leadership. So got there, and with the Panther Party, I was able to learn so much. Some of what not to do or what not to listen to, but just to be able to, for example, figure out how to pack 10,000 bags of groceries with a chicken in every bag takes science. It also takes love. I mean, we did free clinics. I mean, with no money, you all. We had nothing. So lo and behold, I then ended up in college, and I got an organization development degree. And what I did was help corporations get better at what they were doing. And I actually, though I love corporations, don't get me wrong, but I felt like this information, these skills are needed in the community, in the family, in nonprofits. So I decided to sort of smash them together. And lo and behold, Robert F. Smith came along and said, I need you to write the charter for a nonprofit. So what I was able to do was like a cow, milk from so many udders, and put it together and say, what can we do to have pure transformation with love in our heart, not to get mushy, but deep down it is just pure love. As much as I love the concept of prosperity, I still think that we need to be content with ourselves first before we can truly. I have to tell you something my great-grandson said when he was asked, why are you so smart, Khalil? And he thought about it for a minute, and he said, first you have to be happy. And I thought about that. Even to be prosperous is a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong. It has to do with the when, but to be happy has to do with the what. And I want to make sure that philanthropy takes that into consideration for all people up and down the socioeconomic realm.
Oh, those were excellent histories, and it really underscored each of your passions. But what I want to focus on is the what and why. You know, in terms of the evolution of Fund 2, what has been the mission, what has been the mandate, and how has that changed and how do you determine the outcome and impact?
Well, I don't know if you know Robert F. Smith's history, but he's a chemical engineer from Cornell, and he says they're the smartest people. We fight about that, but the whole thing is like, let's figure this out. Let's solve this problem. This is not, well, kind of is rocket science because there's so many systems involved, but put your nose to the grindstone and let's just get a lot of this done. He's a numbers guy, obviously, or he wouldn't be as prosperous as he is. I'm not. I'm more of a story girl, so I think you put those two together, and you can make a real difference. Because as I'm a firm believer that I don't need to know that one more woman died from breast cancer or another man got shot. I don't. It's like one is enough for me, but I do know that for system thinking people, they want the numbers and the stats and all of that. But for me, it's like, get the job. I mean, come on, you all. The Panther Party, we had nothing. Feed the children. Go get some eggs and some bacon. You can get a lot done if you just decide to do it. Because I love the heart and what was it? Heart. Head, heart, and then throw the hands in there and the feet too, and you get a whole lot going. And I think we wait and study too long. I did work in the educational system for a while, and I was frustrated as the dickens. I'm like, one more report? I think it said the same as the last one. So let's get it going. So I think the two of us, Robert with his big brain, and what I say is mine with my big heart, you put those two together and we can get a lot done.
I have to agree with her because you can't do this work and not love people.
That's right.
Like, it is far too hard. Like, if we're just going to be honest about it, it's every day you're pushing. I mean, you pushing. And so at the core, if you don't love the people that you intend to help, you can't be successful at this. I always tell people it's not the space for you. Like, they'll see the outside, right? Yeah. But they don't understand what it really takes to keep moving. Because the challenging thing about this work, I think we have to talk about it, is sometimes it feels like is change happening, right? Because you will put lots of resources behind something, you'll work really hard, you'll take the data, you'll analyze and say, okay, this is the barrier, how do we break it, what do we want the outcome to be? And then something will come on the news, you'll read something, and then you wonder, well, were we thinking the right way about this? And so that's why I think even conversations like this are important, because it's affirming to the three of us, right? That you are on track. And for me, that's a lot of what I do, because I think leaders need the constant reinforcement. People ask all the time, is the vineyard necessary? Well, what do you mean you convene? And it's not until you are facing those issues every day that you understand what it means to be in a room with people and talk about it and work through it, where you don't have to validate what you think.
That's right.
You have the lived experience to go along with it, right? And then we appreciate the data, but we can't get stuck in analysis.
That's right.
Because the issues are complicated, they are stubborn, and to the point you made, they're multi-layered. So that's why you have to have an ecosystem. You have to have everyone in the ecosystem, right? Not just the philanthropists with big checkbooks, right? You need the local people in the community, right, that can invest time, talent, treasure. You need corporations that, of course, you have to drive business outcomes, but there is a thing called good business. So I just think, even the way you all set this panel up, to me, it's reflective of what it takes to sort of have the social impact and sustained impact that our communities need.
And I think what you said is so important, because both of you said, because the proximity to the challenges is really key to being able to have any chance of solving them, right? You can look from a distance and sort of think about a geography, think about a people as if you are a surgeon that's going to enter the room. But it's until you become like a pilot or a passenger on the plane. Until you believe that we have a shared destiny, shared outcome in this, then you start to become creative.
That's right.
Then you start to think about tools beyond checkbooks, because
That's right.
money has a limit.
That's right.
But we've always been able to solve problems in our community through relationships,
That's right.
through being able to pull on tools that we had in our toolboxes. And when we sit in positions like at JPMorgan or in others, we recognize the check has a limit. So we think about the relationship, we think about the other tools, and I always talk about Johnny and Jane, because if Johnny still can't read, what are we doing this for? And so I think it is important to be in community with people who
Sure.
care about Johnny, who love Johnny, who want Johnny to have every single outcome that's possible for him in his life.
Because we are related to John.
We all are related to Johnny. We all are related to Johnny.
You took me back. They were talking about Johnny not being able to read when I was in high school, and that was a while ago. But as you said, it's work that you have to love. It's people that you have to love uplifting. But you have to make some hard business choices. So how do you decide the organizations that you're going to love to carry forward the mission? How do you select the companies, the organizations, the social entrepreneurs that are going to gain the funding, and how do you help them meet their mission and meet the mandate not only of their charter, but your charters as well? And Alicia, I'll start with you, and then Linda, please chime in and, as well as.
I think there are a couple of different analyses. One, I think we really think about what do we uniquely contribute to being a part of the solution, because we're not the solution, right? It is going to take a whole host of individuals to think about solutions. So what do we as an institution bring that uniquely positions us to bring not only the checkbook, but also all of the other tools as an institution? And then really it takes a lot of observation and proximity and relationship with people who are getting the work done, right? I think you really do have to have an understanding and to live and walk with organizations that are working on the ground in community, who go through the ups and downs of just life. They go through the ups and downs of serving in community. They are trying to write the grant application. They are trying to do the service. They're the accountant. You need to walk in tandem with them. And we think about who can we, by our funding, by our tools, who can we take from good to great and from great to excellent that allows for us to scale impact and ultimately be able to look back in the future and say, we actually did something, not with a pound on our chest, but we did something in tandem with all the others that we were able to bring to the table to move that forward. So we have 4 focus areas: jobs and skills, financial health, small business, and neighborhood development, where we can not only bring our philanthropy, but our business also as a part of the complement of what we drive in those communities.
So having said that, how do you determine which organizations to fund and to support, and then how do you measure their success? And also, obviously we have to talk about some of the challenges and failures to meet the mandate. Linda, how do you do that? How do you dissect an organization, social entrepreneurs, and say they're a right fit, their mission's on point, and they have the management to meet the mandate?
Well, first I have to see that they are fully committed and are willing to go through tough times, because there's a sacrifice that's taken into this. But I must tell you, I have a whole lot of what I call go to Jesus meetings where we have to talk, because a lot of people see Fund2 Foundation and Robert as the founder as being an ATM machine, and no, so sorry, generous but not foolish. And so we have to talk about, a lot of times, particularly our women, I hate to say it, are so overwhelmed with so much to do, like it's ridiculous, that the intention to give us all the reports and stats are there, but they don't have the IT staff. There's so many resources that aren't there. So what we've been doing is providing them with resources. There's a group, Resilia, that we use, that we connect them to, so that, because we can't hold everybody's hand. So, but there are places people can go, and so we will pay for them to get a service to get them sort of sourced up, so to speak. But in a sense, I'm a certified coach. I'm a Reiki master. So I've also found out that I'm doing a lot of midwifing, a lot of doulaing. But if you wanted to look at it, it's almost like being a coach. But guess what? That's what white folks get in their corporations. They get it all the time. I would go to Mobile, and I'd sit there and I'd have long conversations with directors and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, this is annoying, but I still would do it. Well, that's what we need to do for each other. And I think we get disappointed or impatient with each other when we shouldn't. It's going to take a while. You have to. What's a doula do? What's a midwife do? You have to help people push to rebirth something that we're talking about, a society that we've never experienced.
Correct.
So how do we expect people to taste it, to feel it, if we're not able to sort of help them hold their hand through the discomfort or the void? You're asking them to live in a void for a world that doesn't exist.
That's right.
So I think of it as coach, doula, or whatever, and frankly, I believe in hidden treasures. Robert Smith is in the stratosphere that everybody comes to him for advice for this, that, and the other. But there's a whole different ground that I bring to him, and he's like, oh my God, this brilliant person. We just brought a woman to him who was, I don't know if I can tell this, Wendell, but I have to. She's an animator. We got her to do an animation film for us. He loved it. So he said, get that animator. Brought her up to talk to him. Come to find out, even though she got her degree in animation, she is a horse trainer for Disney.
Wow.
He's hired her on the spot to buy a horse farm. Hidden treasure.
That's right.
We have so many incredible. I just met you. I love you. I know I'm going to work with you all. I can't wait to find some niche for you all to fit in, and this, that, and the other. We have so much. We don't need to go looking, is my point. We just need to pay attention.
About time, talent, treasure, and vision.
Yes.
And Christal, you've spent so much time with entrepreneurs, business people who are driven. Share with us your partnership with Black Ambition. I just found that is such a powerful partnership, and that goes to the point that all of you have been talking about in terms of creating these collaborations to build something that you didn't even realize was going to take hold and have an impact.
Well, it's funny. My partnership is really with Felicia Hatcher, right? So Felicia has been supportive of my work. We've been sisters. Through this. There's even a tie to JPMorgan when Felicia was still with Cold Fever in Miami. And because I respect what she's doing, I want to support her. I believe she is outcome driven. I believe she has the community at the core of her work. And so when she transitioned to Black Ambition, how can I be helpful? Right? That was simple as that. And, I was excited that she was open to what I wanted to do, thinking about, since we're on the vineyard, we spend so much money here. Every year we come, we spend so much money here. And I said to Felicia, let's invest in entrepreneurs here and around here. So last year, we were very intentional with all of our vendors. I wanted them to be people that didn't get a lot of attention, but were great at their craft. And that takes time, right? So, part of being a partner with someone like a Black Ambition, they had a team that could help us source this, right? Talking about collaboration. And we're looking for diamonds in the rough, right? You know, I always think about people that don't get all of the attention, or, you know, they may not have all their stuff together just yet, but there's something there. And that's what we really sort of look for, because none of us jumped out with our stuff together, right? So I think it's important to always think about partners that have that value, share that value alignment with you, that we're willing to invest in talent, we're willing to invest in people that we want to see win. I think it's that simple.
And just to let our audience know, Black Ambition is the organization that was created by entertainer Pharrell Williams.
Yes.
You know, to drive entrepreneurship and before I go on further, share with us the context, because what is great about this period, there's so much innovation now in philanthropy. It's not the same, well, I don't know if you could call it the same old philanthropy, but you guys are innovating the game. That's why I said you're game changers. But share.
Well, I think, you know, part of, I can speak to what we did with Black Ambition, right? And it was, we opened the table to everyone. We gave everyone a chance to sort of apply. And if they, you know, met the qualifications, then, you know, they were able to advance. And if not, we were able to give feedback, because sometimes people don't know what they don't know, right? You have to, I think, be willing to walk alongside people if you see them putting forth some effort. So they turned in great applications, right? They completed the application on time, right? That's all, right? It's a part, right? That's a part of it, right? That's right. On top of what Linda said, people are just juggling so much. Like, people are just juggling. So I feel like when people are able to show up and do what you requested of them, that's half the battle. And, you know, when they apply, we allocate a certain amount of resources in partnership with Black Ambition. And we said, let's match what we both give. And so some, you know, were able to rise to the occasion and they won. Others, I think, can keep trying. But one thing I do want to say about competitions, I'm hopeful that more people, even if they think they're not ready, will enter. Because you have to be in community. You have to be open to feedback, so that, you know, you may not win now, and sometimes you're not applying always to win, per se. But you do need to be in community with people that can give you some feedback and guidance. And I think that is, to me, even now, I have mentors that I will just get on an airplane to go see them for lunch. Because their feedback, their correction, right? All of that is important for me. I mean, and so I think that's part of what Black Ambition, at the end of the day, I can't speak for Pharrell, but I do believe part of the vision was creating a community for people that just didn't have access.
Alicia, I want to take this question differently in terms of the changes in Black philanthropy. Talk to how this works in a corporate structure. Share with us, you know, what you do and how you do it at JPMorgan Chase. A lot has evolved since, you know, the corporate equity commitments that grew out of, you know, George Floyd tragedy and then the ensuing unrest. Give us a view of how the philanthropic world has changed from a corporate standpoint, and specifically what makes JPMorgan Chase's efforts unique and impactful.
So after and our commitment, the work on building the commitment, the $30 billion racial equity commitment, actually preceded George Floyd's murder. But really, we've seen over the course of these past 5 years us exceed that goal of the $30 billion commitment. And in part, it's because of our belief around that there were assets in the community rather than deficits, and an orientation around that. And whether there's the $30 billion commitment, which we are almost completely meeting, most of that money is in our business and how we do business and how we serve individuals and help giving them access to accounts. and how we think about affordable housing, how we think about neighborhood development. I think that we have seen a shift of really philanthropy's orientation, not around the numbers, right, but around the impact and the outcomes. That in a thirst and a desire to see the outcomes to be delivered based on those monetary commitments. You used to see so many people sort of applaud when the big check was written. But I think you're going to see a shift to people actually being more, and corporations being more excited about the outcomes. I just take Detroit as an example. Our Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, $18 million investment along with others in entrepreneurs of color in Detroit. We've now seen that 30% of those entrepreneurs are now in traditional banking. So moving from grants to traditional banking is the progress that you want to see of being able to reach parity as we think about racial equity. We talk about racial equity, but really what we're trying to achieve is parity and progress for individuals. And I also think you're seeing a shift in who's holding the seats of philanthropy. Just the leaders across the country, the 3 leaders you have here today, probably 30 years ago, you wouldn't have seen us in the seats that we sit in, having influence over the strategy of how dollars and tools touch down in our communities with a thoughtfulness about what works, what do we need to invest in, what doesn't look as shiny, what are hidden gems, and that we also go where others would not. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity right now, given who's at the helm of philanthropy across, if you look at all the philanthropy across the United States, to really just live out that bold vision of being outcome driven for our people.
Well, in terms of the George Floyd moment, you're seeing a lot of diversity, if you will, not only in terms of, as you say, those who are receiving the dollars to have an impact, but also the partnerships that you're forging, as well as the leadership that all of you represent. I'd like to ask the same question of all of you, because I think this is a moment that we really need to focus on. How has philanthropy changed, and will it continue to change? Because there are a lot of forces that are still fighting the change, even though there's been, public announcements and actions to drive equity. You still have forces that are trying to diminish those efforts. So Linda, what's your viewpoint of this era?
Well, I keep thinking about, for us, that we are in partnership with a lot of people. For example, we are the fiscal sponsor for a group called the Southern Communities Initiative, where we realized in doing the numbers that 50% of the black folks in America are in the South, and in actually near 6 cities. So we're actually working to have a deeper impact, not just a cursory impact, but actually get down and figure out where's the broadband, what do they need here, what do they need there, and working with all the different players. Because way back in the day, in the 70s, the whole concept of collaboration was everybody needs to collaborate, but an MOU is not a collaborative tool. You've got to get in there and put, next to each other and go visit together and have folks. You need hiring managers to be involved.
Yes.
Not, I don't believe, I do believe in top down and grassroots, but let me tell you, that middle is where the interpretations are made, where things are effected, and you've got to go that route. So we're working with the various groups around broadband, and everything possible in a community needs to be addressed, every desert, so to speak. We also do internships, because that's another way to get people to have that experience, to sort of learn mistakes on somebody else's time, and also learn systems. So, but it means that you have to work with people. I don't think we need to even say collaboration. I think we need to talk about coalitions. Actually movement where we don't just come and convene. where we actually sit down and plan and say, what do you need? Oh, I've got that here. What do I need? Oh, you've got that here. And sit down and talk. And even if I don't agree with your politics or your whatever, look past it, find that common ground. I think we're doing that like never before, possibly because we have people bearing down on our behinds. You know, like you're saying, it is tough right now, and I think it's like, oh, we better get it together.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of progress, particularly working in the South right now.
Well, in terms of those challenges and that bearing down, I want to go to a specific scenario. And Alicia and Christal, I want you to address that. And of course, Linda, I'd like your view. During the recent Supreme Court decision, you know, it's affirmative action, you know, especially on race-based initiatives, that's, you know, spreading to other areas. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was a lawsuit against the Fearless Fund, whose mandate is to provide capital for Black women-owned businesses, venture capital, and recently the you know, some of the anti-affirmative action forces has filed suit, you know, saying that that's discriminatory, that that's against the Civil Rights Act of, you know, 1863 and 1866 rather, in terms of, you know, private contracts and the, you know, the illegality, unlawfulness of having discriminatory private contracts. So, you know, and that's the same, you know, action that Byron Allen used to take against a number of major corporations to get them to open up opportunities. So that's a serious backlash. And, you know, it seems like we're going to see more of that. How do we deal with those challenges in your space? I know, you know, you specifically, Alicia, have dealt with Fearless Fund and provided financing for Fearless Fund. And Christal, you focus on venture funds. How do you deal with this new dynamic? And they're coming full force.
You want to start?
Sure. I mean, I think that, just in all honesty, it's not new, right? Right. And I think, you know, history is the best teacher. And I would say, you know, study history, find out how people were able to navigate and move through challenges like this. You know, and that's been the advice that I've been given is, you know, and that's the advice that I give people when they ask me, you know, if they are very focused on one race or one gender in their work. People are, I think, a little concerned about that, you know, them being targeted per se. But you know, I think none of this is really new, and we can just learn from what history has taught us before. I do think there's still a way to navigate and to move through this moment. I don't think you have to, you know, stop what you're doing. You may have to tweak it a bit to be, to go back to what I said earlier, an inclusive economy. You asked what that is.
Yep.
An inclusive economy is an economy that works for everybody. Point blank, right? And that's what I want to see, right? I want to see an economy that, regardless of how poor you are, what you look like, you should be allowed to be a part and participate in this economic system to create a life for you and your family that has dignity, right? Just, you know, basic dignity. So I think for me, it's about what helps us create an inclusive economy. That's the focus.
I mean, Christal, so on point, right? The goal hasn't shifted. We are still committed to building an inclusive economy and to have inclusive growth and to removing barriers and building ecosystems that allow for that to take place. And we know that there are barriers that have prevented individuals and kept them on the opportunity sidelines. And there are efforts to build ecosystems and to engage in activity that puts them in the game, that allows for them to compete on the playing field And so we will continue to be engaged in that work. It is good for business. It is good for this country. It is good for all of us to continue and stay committed to those principles. And the form and the fashion, we will continue, as we have always been, innovative. We will be creative in tackling those challenges, and we'll be proximate. And I think that's the commitment that we've had. I think that's the ingenuity and innovation. That's why we align with certain people and institutions to be able to bear out that work. And that is just going to continue. And I think all of us just have really more fire in the belly to continue to do more. The work is, there are signals that we have to continue. We have to continue to engage and even be more innovative in how we approach these challenges and build an inclusive economy so that we don't have retreat for any of us. And so I think that we look at what's happening. We always knew that progress always meets an impediment. That we always have individuals that love status quo. Status quo has a cost. We usually don't calculate it, but it does. And so we have to invest in the change and the innovation that ultimately will allow for us to reach that North Star, which we have remained committed to. If you look at JPMorgan's website today, it will tell we're still committed to building an inclusive economy, still committed to inclusive growth. And we're going to utilize the tools and seek out the opportunities to do that.
Okay. So, Linda, from SNCC to today.
I'm like, it's a gut punch we knew was coming. You know, I think we can learn ways to combat it, and I think, unfortunately, it brings people who weren't necessarily in the same camps together to fight. So we can use it as an opportunity. It's always been that way. I was thinking about Malcolm X's "There's a fox in the north and a wolf in the south," both of the canine family. And in a sense, what we're talking about is the wolves are out. The foxes have always been running, and it's kind of hard to fight a fox because you can't see them, you know. Whereas with these wolves and good lawyers and good thinking, these youngins will come up with some creative, unbelievable things, because we also work with young people, and they have ideas. They're just waiting to be asked what they are. So I've been on this earth too long to do the woe is me. It's, you know, it's been like that for a while, you know. So I hate to say it, I'm kind of like ready.
All of you are ready.
Let's go get them. You know, they've never had this before.
Yes.
And if you really want something to happen, throw some black women into the mix, and we will figure it out.
Yes.
Pure and simple.
Well, that's a perfect segue into, I have two last questions, two final questions. You know, you deal with enormous challenges, you know, entrepreneurship, wealth gap, health disparities, you know, also problems that are global, climate change, what have you. How do you go about developing the next generation of philanthropic leaders to carry this forward? You know, what are the strategies? What do they need to be armed with as the environment evolves? You know, how do you cultivate and mentor them for for today's challenges and future challenges, especially as we're looking at underserved communities? Linda, I'll start with you.
Well, we have a particular program, we call it Restoration Retreat, where we bring young people 14 to 17 years old up to Robert Smith's Lincoln Hills Ranch. And we also bring their parents. We started that this year because what we saw was a little bit of jealousy, or like, oh, you hanging with the rich people, and you know, also not understanding meditation, and you know, like, what are you all doing up there? You know, one thing we all hate is to be abandoned even by our own, right? So we brought the parents up there for one day and they go fly fishing, they do archery, and they get a taste of what the kids do. Now they didn't want to leave. They were like, don't bring the kids anymore, just bring us. But in doing so, we bring the kids up there, they get dental exams, they get ancestry information. We give them almost like a liberal arts degree in 8 days. It's unbelievable. And they say they learn more in that time. We have climate change experts, they go birding, they have STEM classes, they do African dance, we do drumming, meditation. It's like soup to nuts. And they blossom within 5 minutes of meeting each other. The one thing we push back all the time, and they're doing that, I believe we probably had 12 text today, is pay it forward, pay it back, and pay it all around. And they are doing that. They do public service programs. They invest. We give them money to invest. They learn how to invest their money. In other words, it's, with kids, you just need to spark them.
Yes.
You don't need to have, 20 hours of seat time. You just put them in there, give them some kinesthetic information, and you just sit back and then get the information from them. They are amazing. And also, the word that comes up most of the time is love. They know when they get off that bus. I call it stranger love. There's stranger danger, but then there's stranger love. And in a community or a village, you should be loved by strangers, and they say they feel it and they love each other. They're from different cities. And to me, talk is cheap, but when we show them how to participate and how, like things come up, like we had a mountain lion, we had a bear. We figure it out, they learn so much stuff, they feel so empowered. And so we're going to replicate that around the country. Take them to particularly black spaces. We're talking about the Vineyard as one of the places to bring kids so that they can blossom. Pure and simple. That to me is what we're doing. That's it.
That's just great. That's amazing. Christal?
Well, one of the things I try to do is work with students from Spelman in particular that will reach out to me and ask me, how did you enter this field? Can you coach me? And I make time for it. When I'm going through, I literally block out time. So that's really probably one of the ways. The second way is we recently launched an initiative with HBCU presidents. And, you're going to say, how does this connect back to kids? I thought about the most unappreciated leader is an HBCU president. Oftentimes when you think about things in our community or issues in our community, how often are they consulted? How often do we go to them as the expert? And they literally have their finger on the pulse of everything in our community, and especially what our young people are facing. So, I kept thinking, being an impact strategist, I said, how can I be impactful in their lives? Who can I help that then has direct access to them? And so we started doing this recently now, working with HBCU presidents, majority in the South, that are in small towns. I call it the schools our grandparents went to, right? From a foundational perspective, but we started working with about 8 of those institutions and those leaders. The goal for me is to move them into spaces where they should be, to impact their leadership, to give them access to resources and opportunities, and so that we can hear their voices, because they know what our kids are facing. They know when our children show up to college that they can't read and write, they can't write essays, all these things, right? But they also know the opportunity that, if made possible, what they can be and what it means for our community. So that's my way of sort of giving back. It has been my personal philanthropic investment.
That's amazing. Alicia?
So a number of different ways. Derek, thankfully you wrote about it a couple of years ago of Black Giving Circles, and I've been very much just focused on how do we ensure that young people in our community, young leaders, are able to collectively give and then contribute to our community in a really profound way. And I've talked about this. A couple of girlfriends and I, every year, we would sit down and say, we're going to give $100,000 total from our what we earned this year. And so how can we impact 5 organizations with that money? And really, then we said, I bet there's a number of other people that would come alongside us. And in one day, we raised $700,000 from individuals, most of them under the age of 50, giving $10,000 to really impact our community. So I think that collective giving circles, Black giving circles, are just really powerful tools. I think at JPMorgan, I think Christal said it really well, like exposure for young people is so critically important. As Linda said, we have TFI, which is our work with young people in high schools, and young men and now young women of color who are being exposed to our professionals within JPMorgan at all different levels of the organization, and really being invested in as if we know that their trajectory is to shoot to the moon. And then I think the Advancing Black Pathways work around the internship, starting in that sophomore year of college.
That's right.
We know that it is so critically important for their trajectory to have JPMorgan on their resume. It's just a huge game changer for them. And so I think all of those things, what I do personally, which I sort of feel like bleeds into the work. The work is the work. There are no lines between what we do in our day jobs and what we do outside of it, but really bolstering this thought of gratitude is expressed through giving. Exactly. And making that a habit and a way we live our lives.
Wow. All of you have given us so many nuggets of valuable information. I'm going to be a little greedy. I just want one more nugget from each of you. And I'll start with Linda on down.
You just, any nugget?
Yeah, any takeaway that you feel that you'd like to share as we close out.
I don't know. There's so much. For me, education of yourself and also healing of yourself as a leader is so important. There's an old book called The Neurotic Organization, and whether you like it or not, an organization reflects the mental or emotional status of the leader. And the more work you do on yourself, the healthier you are, and the more you can create that environment that will give people confidence to try something in spite of not knowing where they're going. When we say vision, we act like, oh, I've put it on a vision board, it's clear. No, it's not. We're really trying to have a world where the climate is better, where the birds are healthier, where we're not bleaching the coral. We're going to need a lot of healing of self in order to heal somebody. What is it that the physician heal thyself? I think leaders need to really think about healing themselves totally. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. And that will reflect in a community that has those values in action.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Alicia?
I think that one nugget or charge I would say is that I think that the challenges that we face now, but also will face in the future, are going to take us to have courage and to strike bold visions and to recognize that this work is disruptive. It's disruptive to systems that are rooted in keeping the status quo. And so if you do not have courage, this might not be the path for you. If you want to see change, you must know that you are not you will find friend and foe. But being committed to this work will allow for you to sleep at night. It'll allow for you to find friends find comrades to, as Linda said, build coalitions, ultimately, of the courageous that will allow us to reach the outcomes that we know are possible. And so I think people should stay encouraged, but be encouraged to be courageous during this time.
Thank you so much for that.
My sanity through these past 3 years has really been connecting with my roots. I have been fortunate to spend a lot of time on the continent over the past, 2 years. And it has been so healing for me, right? Because it transformed the way I saw myself in the world, right? Oftentimes, you can create a viewpoint of yourself that's really narrow based on narratives. And while everyone's probably not going to be able to run off to Africa, I would challenge people to think about how they see themselves. And how you see yourself speaks to how you show up, right? And what you can contribute. And I realized that, I'm not supposed to do everything. But being really clear on what it is that I should be doing and where I can add value. And that's what I would challenge people in this climate, because it's just nonstop. There's always a thing. But just get really clear with what it is you should be doing, right? And lean into that, and be proud. And be proud of what you contribute. Yeah.
That was just simply amazing from all of you. Thank you for engaging in this amazing conversation. And also, thank you for your time, your talent, your innovation, your experience, your leadership in not only moving African Americans and underserved communities forward, but our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.